Olympia is about what it means to become an adult in the modern world. In the story, Olympia is on the cusp of turning 30 and everything around her is changing. Her mom is sick in the hospital. Her best friend gets a job that is going to take her to New York City, and her boyfriend's job announces that it's moving to California. We shot everything in Chicago. And she has to decide if she's going to move forward in her own life or kind of get left behind as everything around her changes.
What was the inspiration for this film? Because, especially in this day and age where we have the internet, and as you said, people are getting jobs, they're moving from hometown to far, far away. Where did this inspiration come from? Was it personal experiences or experiences from friends?
It was absolutely personal. It's not autobiographical, but I did, when I was writing it, draw from a lot of my own personal experiences and anxieties. I wrote it shortly after I turned 30, which was a very fraught and scary time. I felt like by then I should have more figured out. I should be more financially stable, and I should just generally know what direction I was moving in life. I had none of that. So I drew from those experiences and experiences that I recognized in my friends and peer group. And between all of that, was able to kind of explore what it meant to become an adult and explore those anxieties through Olympia's story.
A lot of people, I hate when people say this, they're just millennials. That's just kind of a common, behavior. So what is it like, growing up right now, with the internet and with the world becoming much smaller because of transportation and communication?
Well, first of all, I think it's uncharted territory. I think that our generation, no doubt, is the first generation to grow up in the digital world. And yeah, you might say that brings a lot of ease and comfort to your life, but there's a lot of challenges associated with that as well, because we're the first ones to figure it out, honestly. And not to mention the mountain of student debt that most of us are encompassed in, and starting off that path to adulthood with the disadvantage. You're starting off below the zero mark. So, I think that our generation is seeing a lot of growing pains right now, and I think that we're just working towards explaining that story and letting everyone know that we're all going through this and that we're going to figure it out together.
Yeah. And I think every generation has its unique challenges, right? The greatest generation had to deal with World War II. Gen Xers were kind of living in a world that felt a bit less stable than previous, than previous generations experienced. Right. For our generation, we are having to navigate. I call us kind of on the cusp of being kind of analog and digital, right? I remember when we got our first computer in our home, and so we've kind of had to navigate.
How exciting was that? I mean, most people don't realize that. Most kids these days think it's always been there, but how exciting was that?
Well, I was pretty young when we got it, so I kind of took to it as it was almost a toy for me. So kind of going between the space of kind of writing things down and typing things, I navigated pretty seamlessly. Mm-hmm. But it definitely was, it was early enough to not realize that it was a brand new territory. When we got our first computer, it was before, I think it was like right before the internet, and that level of connectivity became really ubiquitous. So I don't think any of us realized that we were opening a portal into a whole new way of understanding the world and communicating with our communities in the larger world. And I think our generation, we've been the kind of the test kids for discovering what that actually means and how that affects our psyche. We were talking just yesterday about how being on social media too long can really affect our mental health, and sometimes we just have to turn our phone off, because if not, we feel like zombies, we feel depressed, we're constantly comparing ourselves to one another. And I think we're some of the first people to really understand what that means.
So how did you guys hook up? You had the story, you directed it, so how did you guys, get together and say, let's do this?
McKenzie and I both went to graduate school at DePaul University. She was part of the theater school and I was part of the film school. And we took a class years ago, I guess it was about 8 years ago now, where they paired the two of us up to do a short film together. And we worked really hard on that short film and created something that we were both really proud of, but didn't necessarily follow the rules of the assignment. So we definitely heard it from our professors, but
it paid off.
It definitely paid off. It was one of the best decisions I think I've made, honestly, in my scholastic career anyway. And then years later, she reached out to me with this script just to get notes, and I helped her workshop it. And slowly but surely, we started to get a little funding together, and she asked me to direct the movie. And then we formed a business together. We've been producing together. I've been doing a festival run together, so it's been a pretty wild ride.
Yeah. I knew when we did that first short school project that I wanted to find a way to work with Greg in the future. I thought his visual sensibility and style of storytelling was so exciting and dynamic, and I'd never seen a student come with that level of vision and creativity, and so I knew I wanted to find a way to harness that, right, and use that to tell stories that I was interested in telling. And it wasn't until a number of years later, like Greg said, that I had a script, and he was one of the first people to read it. And it can be hard sometimes to get people to read your movie. It's 100-something pages usually, and not everybody wants to take the time to read something that might not even be that good. But Greg took the time and gave such thoughtful feedback, and I knew that if we were able to go into production, he was the one who I wanted to help it come into the world.
It's a true friendship.
Yeah, it really is.
So talk about filming in the great city of Chicago. What was that like? Where did you guys film in Chicago?
Yeah, Olympia, I think, is such a relatable story for a lot of people in our generation, especially those of us in creative settings in urban areas. But we obviously have strong feelings towards Chicago, and we definitely wanted to make Chicago the central part of the story. I think in a lot of ways it's a bit of our love letter to Chicago. But the best thing about filming in Chicago is the community and the support that we had behind this film. Most of our crew are, I think, our student filmmakers. This is also my MFA thesis, so we had great support from our university. And the city itself, we pretty much achieved every permit and every request we ever put in, and there's just such a great community behind us.
Yeah, we were talking earlier and we realized that Olympia could likely take place in any, major American city, but it was so important to us to show Chicago in a light that it doesn't get shown in very frequently in mainstream media. One of the shows shooting currently in Chicago is The Shy, which I love, and I love Lena Waithe as an artist, but it shows a very specific and limited view of what it means to be of Chicago and what it means to also be a black person in Chicago, and that view and that scope was 100% accurate, but it's limited. So it was important to us to show the central characters who are black people and people of color living and thriving in Chicago in a different way that that we often see, which is usually rooted in oppression, poverty, violence. That's part of the story. That's not the entire story. And so it's really lovely to be able to show people of color moving around in a Chicago that is beautiful and inviting and vibrant, and is as full of as much opportunity for our characters as it is for characters in Easy, and Joe Swanberg's Easy.
What has your festival experience been so far, taking this around to different festivals, but here in Bentonville, Arkansas?
So we've been on the film festival circuit since about September of last year. So we've been fortunate enough to travel to a lot of different places and get a lot of different people's feedback on the film, which has been really lovely. Bentonville, we both agreed this morning, is really, really special because this is the first festival, at least for me, that I have felt that all of the films that are part of that have been programmed are really supported and really championed by the festival. We've been fortunate enough to play some large festivals, but I think sometimes when you're new filmmakers, when you're very indie, and when you don't have necessarily any celebrity attached, you can really get lost in the shuffle, and it's hard to say, hi, pay attention, we made this, film, we want to share it with you. And it's really lovely to feel that the programming here and the staff here and the advocates here are really committed to giving each of these stories their platform and their time to shine. And they're also doing that through a lens of diversity and inclusion, which is long overdue in this industry.
And they've been doing strides. It even way before it was cool.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Now more people are I think because of things like this, because of festivals like this, people are realizing that it's not like a favor you're doing to less represented filmmakers. It's absolutely essential to moving our narratives forward as individual communities and nationwide and as artists.
So what's next for the film?
We have a few more festivals on our docket. Next week we'll be in Rainier Independent Film Festival in Washington State. And then a few weeks after that we will be in Arizona and then Boston at the end of June.
Wow, and what's next for you guys professionally?
We both have a couple scripts that we're seeking financing for at the moment. Chicago is such a big comedy town. I have a comedy script about two guys that team up to take down the organic food mafia, and
That's awesome.
but it's very much in the vein of like the '90s comedies that we love, like Tommy Boy or Dumb and Dumber.
Right.
And then we have a couple other projects as well.
Yeah, I also have a few scripts that I have been working with various producers and my manager to kind of get realized. I'm also an actor in Chicago, so that keeps me pretty busy. I just finished doing a show at the Goodman Theater, so it's been really lovely to kind of jump from kind of place to place, kind of working on promoting Olympia and then coming back and working on a play or a short film or doing some of the commercial work that I do and a lot of other writing. But I'm really excited about some of the new scripts that I've been writing. One is a feature set in Chicago in 1997. So it'll be really cool to come back to the city, do something again that's really rooted in the city, but in a different time frame and through a different lens.
I gotta ask, is there such thing as an organic food mafia?
Well, I think behind any corporation there's some trickery and sneakery. I think the organic food industry is loosely...
I think it would be an awesome hashtag, to be honest with you.
Right, yeah. A lot of these industries, it's all about money at the end of the day. So I think the organic food industry is loosely regulated, and I think that, there very much is a possibility of something going on behind the scenes. But it's to that film in particular is really all about friendship and two people coming together.
One last question. We need to get more people to the Windy City. It's a great city to visit. What would you tell visitors, number one, what's the number one attraction that you would take them to personally, and what is a restaurant that you would tell them to go to taste what Chicago is really about?
So I think one underrated thing about Chicago is definitely the theater scene. We might say it's second to New York, but talent-wise it's as equal or above. I mean, this is case in point right here. But there's just so much to offer in Chicago. Chicago's such a well-rounded city.
So theater district.
Theater
Where
district.
would you take them to eat?
That's a tricky question. I mean,
if you say something, you will have people on Yelp going, "Oh no, no, no."
Check out anything in the West Loop is really blowing up right now. Girl in the Goat is a fantastic restaurant. Olympia is like one of the best restaurants in North America. I'm sure you have some favorites.
Yeah. I think one of the most beautiful things about Chicago, and one of the first things I saw when I drove into the city the first time, is that it's a beautiful metropolis right on the shore of a huge lake. It's one of the most gorgeous things that I get to see every day. And so I think any time that I or other tourists get to interact with Lake Michigan is really, really special. As far as eating goes, at Chicago, you can eat your entire way through Chicago. Like it almost doesn't matter where you go. But one restaurant in my neck of the woods in the city that I really love is Peach's Southern Kitchen. It's a Black-owned restaurant, and they've got great breakfast and brunch and like this great, like anything that can come with peaches does, and it's absolutely delicious.